Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
David Bowie, born David Robert Jones, January 8, 1947 to January 10, 2016, was a British singer, songwriter, actor, and cultural icon whose influence on music, fashion, and popular culture is unparalleled. Known for his ever-evolving style and fearless experimentation, Bowie built a career that spanned more than 5 decades, redefining what it meant to be a rock star. Early life and career beginnings. Bowie was born in Brixton, London, and grew up in Bromley. From an early age, he showed a deep interest in music, learning saxophone and playing in several local bands. In 1966, he adopted the stage name David Bowie to avoid confusion with Davy Jones of the Monkees. His breakthrough came with the 1969 single, Space Oddity, released shortly before the Apollo 11 moon landing, which introduced his flair for theatricality and cosmic themes. The rise of Ziggy Stardust. Bowie's true ascent began in the early 1970s with the creation of his androgynous, alien-like alter ego, Ziggy Stardust. The album The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, 1972, propelled him to stardom, blending glam rock, science fiction, and provocative performance art. His bold reinventions challenged norms of gender and sexuality, making him a pioneering figure for self-expression and individuality. Musical evolution. Bowie never stayed in one style for long. In the mid-1970s, he moved from glam rock to the soulful grooves of Young Americans, 1975, which produced the hit Fame, co-written with John Lennon. He then entered a darker, experimental phase with albums like Station to Station, 1976, and the celebrated Berlin Trilogy, Low, 1977, Heroes, 1977, and Lodger, 1979, created with Brian Eno. These works fused rock with electronic, ambient, and avant-garde influences, leaving a lasting imprint on alternative and electronic music. Global stardom. In the 1980s. The 1980s saw Bowie achieve massive mainstream success with Let's Dance, 1983, produced by Nile Rodgers, which spawned hits like Modern Love and China Girl. His sleek style, music videos, and charisma made him an MTV-era superstar. He also collaborated with Queen on the iconic track Under Pressure, 1981. Acting and artistry. Beyond music, Bowie had a successful acting career, appearing in films such as The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976, Labyrinth, 1986, and The Prestige, 2006. He also worked in theater, most notably on Broadway in The Elephant Man. His creativity extended into painting and art collecting, reflecting his lifelong fascination with visual expression. Later career and legacy. Bowie continued experimenting through the 1990s and 2000s, embracing industrial rock, electronica, and jazz. After a decade-long hiatus from performing, he stunned fans with his comeback album The Next Day, 2013. His final work, Black Star, 2016, released just 2 days before his death from cancer, was hailed as a haunting and brilliant farewell, a record full of mystery, symbolism, and artistic courage. Impact. David Bowie's legacy lies not just in his music but in his ability to challenge conventions. He blurred boundaries between genres, reinvented himself constantly, and inspired countless artists across rock, pop, fashion, and film. His fearless exploration of identity, sexuality, and artistry continues to resonate, making him one of the most influential and beloved figures in modern culture. Early influences and musical roots. David Bowie's passion for music and art was evident from childhood. Inspired by American rock and roll, jazz, and beat poetry, he studied design and mime, which later influenced his stage presence. The works of Little Richard, Elvis Presley, and avant-garde theater shaped his sense of performance as something larger than just playing songs. It was about storytelling and transformation. His early career was marked by experimentation and searching for a unique identity. Before Space Oddity made him a household name, Bowie had dabbled in various genres, from folk to mod rock. These early struggles taught him resilience and a willingness to reinvent himself. Reinvention as a way of life. Bowie's career was defined by reinvention. He adopted different personas not just for theatrics, but as a form of artistic exploration. Ziggy Stardust, 1972-1973, the alien rock star. A glam rock phenomenon that blurred gender lines and celebrated freedom of identity. Aladdin Sane, 1973, Ziggy Goes to America, a more fractured, decadent persona reflecting the chaos of fame. The Thin White Duke, 1976, a cold, aristocratic figure associated with Station to Station. This era coincided with Bowie's struggles with cocaine addiction and a darker phase in his life. These transformations were not just costumes, they reflected his philosophy that identity is fluid, and that music and performance can serve as tools for exploring different facets of the self. Berlin years, art and healing. Bowie's move to Berlin in the late 1970s was a turning point. Seeking escape from the destructive excesses of Los Angeles, he settled in West Berlin, where he collaborated with Brian Eno and Iggy Pop. The Berlin Trilogy albums, Low, Heroes, Lodger, were bold, minimalist, and experimental, incorporating electronic sounds inspired by German bands like Kraftwerk. During this time, Bowie also supported Iggy Pop's solo career, co-writing and producing albums like The Idiot and Lust for Life. The Berlin period is often seen as Bowie's creative rebirth, blending vulnerability with innovation. Influence on fashion and gender expression. Bowie was as much a style icon as a musician. With his flamboyant costumes, makeup, and androgynous looks, he challenged rigid norms of masculinity and femininity. His fearless approach influenced generations of musicians, designers, and fans. The concept of being unapologetically yourself became central to his legacy. Artists from Madonna and Lady Gaga to Harry Styles and Janelle Monáe cite Bowie as a direct inspiration. His presence gave countless fans the courage to embrace their own uniqueness. 1990s and beyond, the restless innovator. Even after his peak fame, Bowie never stood still. In the 1990s, he embraced industrial and electronic sounds, collaborating with Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails. His band Tin Machine, 1989-1992, was an attempt to strip away his superstar image and return to the raw energy of rock. The 2000s saw him experimenting with internet distribution and multimedia art. Always ahead of the curve, he was one of the first major artists to release a downloadable single, Telling Lies, in 1996, foreshadowing the streaming era. Final Years and Farewell. Bowie's last album, Black Star, 2016, is now regarded as one of the most powerful farewells in music history. Filled with cryptic lyrics, jazz influences, and themes of mortality, it was released just 2 days before his death from liver cancer, a diagnosis he kept private. The album turned into a final gift, solidifying his reputation as an artist who even transformed death into art. Legacy and cultural impact. David Bowie's influence goes far beyond music. Music inspired artists across rock, pop, punk, electronic, and hip-hop. His work continues to shape modern sounds. Fashion, a pioneer of androgyny, gender-bending fashion, and theatrical stagewear. Film and theater brought surreal, magnetic presence to movies and stage. Philosophy, embodied the idea that identity is not fixed but fluid, inspiring movements around self-expression and LGBTQ+ rights. Pop culture. A true chameleon who made reinvention not a gimmick but an art form. Sparkles. In the end, David Bowie was more than a rock star, he was a cultural architect. He proved that music could be theater. Identity could be reimagined, and art could live in every stage of existence. Early life and formation of an artist. David Robert Jones was born on January 8, 1947, in Brixton, South London. His father, Haywood Stenton John Jones, worked for a children's charity, while his mother, Margaret Peggy Burns, was a waitress. Growing up in post-war Britain, Bowie was drawn to American rock and roll, R&B, and jazz records. At age 15, he suffered a fight at school that left him with one permanently dilated pupil, creating his striking, different-colored eyes appearance. This distinctive feature became part of his mystique. By the mid-1960s, Bowie played in several short-lived bands and experimented with stage names before settling on Bowie, inspired by the Bowie knife, because it symbolized cutting through convention. Breakthrough and stardom. 1969 Space Oddity. Released just as the Apollo 11 mission launched, the song introduced the world to Major Tom, a recurring character in Bowie's work. It climbed the charts, and Bowie became known as a futuristic storyteller. 1972 Ziggy Stardust. With the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, Bowie became a superstar. Ziggy was flamboyant, alien, bisexual, and fearless, challenging Britain's conservative culture. Bowie's theatrical concerts fused music, fashion, and drama. 1975 Young Americans. Bowie called this sound plastic soul. The album featured Fame, co-written with John Lennon, his first U.S. #1 hit. 1976 The Thin White Duke and Berlin Move. After battling addiction and paranoia in Los Angeles, Bowie relocated to Berlin, collaborating with Brian Eno. This creative renaissance produced the groundbreaking Low, Heroes, and Lodger. The 1980s, global icon 1980 Scary Monsters, and Super Creeps, showed he could combine innovation with commercial appeal. 1981 Under Pressure, with Queen. One of his most enduring collaborations. 1983 Let's Dance, produced by Nile Rodgers, this album made Bowie a global pop icon. Songs like China Girl and Modern Love dominated MTV, furthering his reach to younger audiences. He was now not just a musician but a brand of cool, sophistication, and reinvention. Acting and other arts. Bowie's charisma translated to the screen. The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976, as Thomas Jerome Newton, he embodied the role of an alien lost in human vices. Labyrinth, 1986, as Jareth the Goblin King. He became an iconic figure for a generation. The Elephant Man, Broadway, 1980, proved himself as a serious actor. The Prestige, 2006, played Nikola Tesla, symbolically embodying an inventor who reshaped reality. Bowie was also an avid painter, sculptor, and art collector, particularly of modern and outsider art. 1990s to 2000s, innovation beyond fame. Even after his peak fame, Bowie kept moving forward. Tin Machine, 1989 to 1992, a band project that stripped away his superstar persona. Outside, 1995. A concept album with industrial and electronic influences, co-created with Brian Eno. Earthling, 1997. Inspired by drum and bass and rave culture, showing Bowie's ability to stay ahead of the curve. Heathen, 2002, and Reality, 2003, mature works reflecting spirituality, mortality, and introspection. He also explored technology, launching his own internet service provider, BowieNet, and being one of the first artists to release songs online. Final years. Black Star and Farewell. Bowie was diagnosed with liver cancer in 2014 but kept it private. He spent his last years working on Black Star, 2016, collaborating with jazz musicians. The album, released on his 69th birthday, is full of cryptic imagery, meditations on death, and artistic rebirth. Just 2 days later, on January 10, 2016, he passed away in New York City. His death shocked the world, yet Black Star transformed into his final artistic statement, a carefully crafted goodbye. Legacy and philosophy. David Bowie's influence is immeasurable. Music inspired rock, punk, new wave, electronica, hip-hop, and pop. His fingerprints are everywhere, from Joy Division and U2 to Madonna, Nirvana, Radiohead, Lady Gaga, and beyond. Fashion and identity. He blurred gender lines, redefining masculinity and encouraging self-expression. His androgynous looks opened conversations about fluid identity long before it was widely accepted. Art and performance. Saw music as theater. Every album was not just a record but a performance piece. Philosophy. Bowie believed in embracing change, stating, "I don't know where I'm going from here, but I promise it won't be boring." Sparkles. Bowie was more than a musician, he was a cultural visionary. He made reinvention a form of art, taught the world to embrace strangeness, and turned his own mortality into a masterpiece. Detailed career timeline. 1960s. Finding his voice 1964 to 1966. Performed with bands like the King Bees, the Manish Boys, and the Lower Third. 1967. Released his debut album David Bowie, which went largely unnoticed. 1969. Space Oddity became a hit in the UK, aligning with the moon landing. Bowie introduced Major Tom, a character he would revisit throughout his career. 1970s. The Chameleon emerges. 1971. Hunky Dory, featuring classics like Changes and Life on Mars, showcased his songwriting brilliance. 1972. The rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars made him an international star. The Ziggy persona embodied glam rock and gender-bending performance. 1973. Released Aladdin Sane, Ziggy Goes to America, famous for the lightning bolt makeup. Retired Ziggy at the height of fame. 1975. Young Americans brought a shift towards soul and R&B. Fame hit number 1 in the U.S. 1976, introduced Station to Station and the Thin White Duke persona. Bowie struggled with drug addiction. 1977 to 1979, the Berlin Trilogy, Low, Heroes, Lodger, Experimental. Influential works blending electronic and ambient music with rock. 1980s, the pop icon 1980, Scary Monsters, and Super Creeps, produced Ashes to Ashes, revisiting Major Tom with a darker lens. 1981, collaborated with Queen on Under Pressure. 1983, Let's Dance, produced by Nile Rodgers, made Bowie a global superstar again. Modern Love and China Girl dominated MTV. 1986, starred as Jareth the Goblin King in Labyrinth, cementing his cult film status. 1990s, Restless Experimentation. 1990 to 1992, fronted Tin Machine, a harder rock band. 1993, Black Tie White Noise, influenced by his marriage to Somali model Iman and urban jazz. 1995, Outside reunited Bowie with Brian Eno, a dark industrial concept album. 1997, Earthling, influenced by drum and bass, showed Bowie embracing rave culture. 2000s, Mature Artist, Digital Pioneer. 2002, Heathen, a critically acclaimed work reflecting spirituality. 2003, Reality, followed by a tour cut short due to health issues. 2004 to 2012, retreated from public life, focusing on family with Iman. 2013, surprised fans with The Next Day, his first album in a decade. 2016, the final masterpiece. January 8, 2016, released Black Star on his 69th birthday. January 10, 2016, passed away from liver cancer in New York City, turning Black Star into a haunting farewell. Globe cultural and social impact. Fashion and gender identity. Bowie shattered boundaries of gender and sexuality. His Ziggy Stardust costumes and androgynous makeup challenged 1970s conservatism. He openly spoke about bisexuality, though later said he exaggerated it, making him an icon for LGBTQ+ self-expression. Influence on music artists across generations. Cite Bowie, punk and new wave. The Sex Pistols, Susie and the Banshees, Joy Division. Alternative rock. U2, Radiohead, Nirvana. Pop icons, Madonna, Lady Gaga, Harry Styles. Hip-hop and R&B. Kanye West and Frank Ocean sampled and referenced him. Film, art, and theater. His performance style was informed by mime, studied with Lindsay Kemp, and avant-garde theater. His art collection included works by Damien Hirst and Basquiat. His role in The Man Who Fell to Earth became a metaphor for his own alien persona. Politics and global issues. Though not overtly political, Bowie challenged norms and raised awareness through cultural expression. His 1987 Berlin Wall concert, performed so close to the barrier that East Berliners could hear it, became a symbolic moment of freedom and resistance. Thought balloon. Bowie's philosophy on life and art. On reinvention. I don't have stylistic loyalty. That's why people perceive me changing all the time. But there's a real continuity in my subject matter. On identity. Bowie saw identity as a performance, not a fixed essence, an idea that resonates strongly in today's conversations around gender and selfhood. On mortality. His final works suggest acceptance and transformation. Black Star is not about defeat but transcendence, turning death into art. Face Mask. Legacy music. A catalog spanning folk, glam, soul, funk, electronic, industrial, and jazz. Cultural liberation. Made it safe to be strange, different, flamboyant, and proud of it. Artistic courage. Never repeated himself, even at the risk of losing fans. Immortality in culture. His personas, Ziggy Stardust, the Thin White Duke, Jareth, remain archetypes in popular imagination. Sparkles. In the end, David Bowie embodied art as a way of life. He lived not just to entertain but to transform himself, his audience, and the culture around him. His story is one of fearless change, constant curiosity, and the belief that art could be both deeply personal and universally transformative. The Many Faces of Bowie. 1. Ziggy Stardust, 1972-1973, concept: an androgynous alien rock star who comes to Earth as a messenger. Why it mattered. Ziggy challenged conservative notions of gender and sexuality in the early 70s. His bright red hair, glitter outfits, and makeup were shocking and liberating. Impact. Ziggy made Bowie a superstar but also nearly consumed him. He famously killed the character on stage in 1973 to avoid being trapped in the persona. 2. Aladdin Sane, 1973, concept. Often called Ziggy.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.